So, hi everyone, it's Bonnie Terry here with our Awaken the Scholar Within call, and it is a lovely Monday evening here. And then we're going to mostly talk about multiplication. There's additional things that you can do that will be very helpful, such as jumping rope, doing the count by. So every jump, you're going to go 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20. Or 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 28, 32, 36, 40. And you find that, as you get in the higher ones, you slow down a little bit, but then you just slow down your jumping rope a little bit. You can do the same thing when you're on swings. I know when I was a little kid, I used to do that kind of thing all the time. In fact, I just remembered this game that I used to play all the time, and I would do my multiplication. And I actually have a picture, but I think it's going to be too hard to find it right now. So I'm just going to kind of draw it out. We had a separate garage to our house, but that doesn't make any difference, So here was the garage, and there was a sidewalk next to it. And so you can do it on any garage, with a driveway or a sidewalk. And I'd be bouncing a ball. Here's the ball, and I bounce the ball, and then I would, I guess typically what I do is I would throw it at the wall, and then it would bounce down. And as I'm throwing it to the wall, I'm saying 2 times 1 is 2. 2 times 2 is 4. 2 times 3 is 6. 2 times 4 is 8. And so I'm physically doing something while I'm saying them. And again, I'm saying the whole thing at this point. So we want to be practicing with saying the whole thing, and we also want to be practicing with just doing the count bys. So doing a physical activity, like I say, with the ball makes it really easy. You can do the same thing on the floor, playing roly-poly, where you're just rolling the ball back and forth as you're saying them. And when we do that, we often have whoever is sitting over here. I'm going to show you my very crude drawings here. And here's the legs. And then we have the other person sitting over here. Legs, and there's their hands. So here this person could say 2 times 1 is as they roll the ball, and this person has to give the answer 2. Then they say the next one, 2 times 2 is, and this person has to give the answer. You can do this with playing catch. You can do this where you are bouncing a ball back and forth to each other also. All of those are going to really be helpful because you're physically doing something while you are saying them. And when you're physically doing something and you're saying them at the same time, your body is in a much more relaxed state, and so it's going to free the mind to focus better and retain that information better. So does that make sense?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So then the next thing is, I need to move these again, is so you can jump rope, you can do either of these 2 games. You can also rebound on a mini trampoline doing the count bys. So all of these kinds of things will help. Excuse me. You can walk around the house saying the families that you're working on, and the critical piece is that they need to be in order. And I want to show you what I did, as I just put them on cardstock, and I didn't even put the answers on the back, but it's in order. 2 times 0 is 0. 2 times 1 is 1. 2 times 2 is 2, and you can actually handwrite the answers on the back if you want. 2 times 3 is 6. 2 times 4 is 8. So I'm saying them all in order. Now, in this deck that I have, it goes all the way up to the 10s, but I'm only doing 2 families at a time. So if I'm working on the 2s and 3s, that's all I'm working on, the 2s and 3s. And so I'm only going to be working on this little group of cards. Now, often you can get flashcards at the grocery store, or at the the drugstore, at Walmart, or the Five and Dime, whatever. If you do that, and it's perfectly great to do that, and I know I've gotten them in the past, and I thought I did bring them up because I grabbed a set that I had. I always use a hole punch and put a hole in one of the corners so that I can put them on a ring. And I always buy 2 sets. And the reason I buy 2 sets is that they write on both sides. So if I'm going to be putting them in sequential order, if I'm putting the 4s in sequential order, I need to have my stack of 4s. Well, of course, that stack of 4s is going to have different things on the back. But if I buy 2 sets, then I can typically get all of them in chronological order. So does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so again, with that, and you can get these rings for putting in the holes just at a hardware store. They're really inexpensive. So then you're just, obviously these aren't in order. I just grabbed them out of the box. But then you're just going to, go flipping around. And you can be walking around when you're doing those. Again, really important, only do 2 families at a time so you are not overwhelmed. And then the next thing is, when you're driving around town, if you're not out in the country, if you're out in the country, there's typically not street signs. So you can't do it then. But if you're driving around town, around the city, any place where there's lots of street signs and billboards, what we do is we look for our count buys in chronological order. So if we're working on our 3s and 4s, I'll say, okay, everybody, we're going to start with the 3s. And so we'll actually, sometimes we'll start with 0. Other times I'll say, let's just start with 3, because we know 3 times 0 is 0. There's nothing there. But we can start with 3 times 1. So we're going to look for the 3s. Who can find a 3 on a sign? And after we find a 3 on a sign as we're driving, oh, there's a 6. And maybe there's other numbers, but you can't use them because you have to go in chronological order. Oh, there's a 9 and a 1 and a 2, which would make 12. If there's not 12 next to each other, you can use a 1 and a 2 to combine it to make 12. And there's a 1 and a 5, it's 15. There's a 1, now I'm looking for an 8 because I need to get 18. And so you can be looking for your numbers while you're out and about. That's going to help the kids to remember their multiplication tables. The next, I'm trying to think, did I skip one? Because I thought I put something else down too. And I'm not seeing it, so hang on a second. Here we go. The next thing is that before breakfast, we're going to say our count buys. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 24, 27, 30. Then we're going to do the same thing if we're home at lunchtime, and we're going to do the same thing if we're home at dinner. You can also have these, just make a strip up, kind of like at as a placemat. That would be, at their place setting to help them remember if they're having trouble, so that they can just go ahead and say their count buys. And again, they're seeing it then, and so that's really great because they can see what they're having that visual input, and when you have them say it out loud, They are both have the visual as well as the hearing part. So we're getting in two areas of learning there, two avenues. Then the next thing is you're going to be posting this here on the bathroom mirror. And you can go ahead and post, both of the ladders or both of the sets of count bys on the bathroom mirror. Post them on the bedroom door. Post them next to the bed or on the ceiling above the bed. Post them on the back of the front door so that they are seeing those numbers repeatedly. Because the more you see it and the more you see it and say it, the more it's going to sink in. So does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so then the next thing is we want to start to look for relationships in the count bys. And so we have what we call the multiplication practice grid, and it's just a grid of numbers 1 through 100, with 10 across. And so what we can do with this is color a stripe on the multiples of 2s. So I'm going to put a stripe on all of the multiples of 2. And so I'm starting to see where all those even numbers are. These are all multiples of 2s. Now I could have also just gone, 2, 4, 6, 8, and that's how I would actually have the kids do it. I just did it this way to make it a little bit faster. Then we're going to use a different color. And put a circle around the multiples of 3. So we have 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 24, 27, 30. And so I start to see the relationship of, when they are both a multiple of 2 and both a multiple of 3. The real beauty of this comes in when you are doing, when you are doing multiples of 2s, and I'm just going to circle them up to 20. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20. Actually, I'll go ahead and do them up to 40. 22, 24, 26, 28, 30, 32, 34, 36, 38, 40. Then what I want to do is to do the multiples of 4s. And we're going to put an X on all the multiples of 4. So we have 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 28, 32, 36, 40. And we lost something, so I'm going to go get it back. It just doesn't want to keep those on. But you get the idea here, I think, where, gosh, every multiple of 4 is also a multiple of 2. That's important to start to get that number sense. And every multiple of 6 is going to be a multiple of 2. And every multiple of 8 is going to be a multiple of 2. So do you kind of get what I'm talking about here?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's going to be really helpful for kids to get that relationship of what is happening with their multiples. Okay, so we talked about on the bathroom mirror and everything. We went over that. I explained how when you get good at the two families, you drop one off and then you add the next one. For example, work on the 2s and 3s, drop off the 2s and add the 4s. So then you're doing 3s and 4s. You get really good at that. You drop off the 3s and do the 4s and 5s. You get really good at that. Drop off the 4s and do 5s and 6s and so on. So then this is a good game to do with two dice. And you're going to roll 2 dice. And you're going to build the rectangle, and you're going to color and label it. And you can do it with 2 players, you can do it with 4 players, you can do it with 3 players, 5, 6, and you can do it with as many players as you want. And so you're going to roll your die. And so in this example here, it might be a little bit hard to see, so I'm going to tell you. The first roll in the sample game was a roll of a 3-on-1 dice and a 5 on the other dice. So I'm going to mark off 3 groups of 5. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 2, 2, 3, 4, 5, 3, 2, 3, 4, 5. 3 times 5 is 15. So now I'm starting to see how much space 3 times 5 takes up. So in the next roll, I have 2 times 3. And so how much space will that take up? So I'm going to go 2 groups of 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 2 groups of 3. 2 times 3 is 6. Take up that much space. The next roll is 3 times 4. And so I'm going to do 3 groups of 4. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3. 3 groups of 4 is 12. 3 times 4 is 12. So if I were to roll 1 times 2, is that going to take up a lot of space or a little bit of space?
Little.
If I were to roll 6 times 5, will that take up a lot of space or a little space?
A lot.
Okay, so those are some of the things that you're going to find that the kids are starting to see the difference in the amount of space they take up. So what you do is you alternate rolls. So the first person rolls and fills out. If it were 2 times 3, they would be doing this amount here. And then the next person rolls and say they roll 1 times 5. And so I'm going to switch colors. So they're going to do this here. So you can shade it in any way you want, just so that it's filled in. And then we actually write down what it is representing. 1 times 5. So I shouldn't have done the shading the way I just did. It made it too hard. This one over here would then have written on it 2 times 3. Okay? The object of the game is the first person to cover this whole rectangle. They are the winner, whoever covers the whole rectangle. Sometimes what happens is that you may get all the way down here, all of this is filled in. And maybe the other person is only filled in this amount. And you roll a 2 times 4. This player rolls a 2 times 4. Well, they can't go. There's not 4 spaces. There's only 3 spaces. So then the next, so they have to leave it blank, and the next person gets to roll. So sometimes, even though it looks like you're winning, the other person can sneak up and win. Sometimes you get to where there's just 1 square left, and that's it. You can't move anymore. Well, if you were to get a 1 times 1, you'd be able to move. But so that's how you would do this here. And like I say, it's again just further practice with multiplication, plus it is helping you see what it means. What kind of space does it take up? what does 3 times 5 mean? What does 3 times 4 mean? Because you really want to have a sense in your mind of, you know, the value. What kind of space is that?
Okay.
So, and then there's another, and I just thought of it right now. See if I can kind of draw it out. There's another thing that you can do. Oh, I know what I can do. I can do it on Excel. So let me see if I can move down to another page. And we want to be moving over to here. So this block here would be that would be 1 times 1. Now I've got 1 times 2. Now I've got 1 times 3. I've got 1 times 4, and so on. If I were doing my 2's, it would be 2 times 1, 2 times 2, 3 times 2, 4 times 2, and so on. So again, you start to see those relationships. So does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and again, when I do this, I have the kids write down on top. And, you know, I just have them lightly color in the places, and then 2 times 1, and then this here is going to be 2 times 2, and this one will be 2 times 3, and 2 times 4, and so on. So that, again, they can start to see how things grow, okay?
Okay.
So any questions about any of that?
No.
And Bonnie, how does usually take a child to learn a table? I know it depends on a child.
Right. Well, usually I was going through 2 tables a week, and they were getting it, you know, pretty darn well. But the thing of it is, it's because we're doing them in order. And then after you do them in order, then you can give them a worksheet like that first one. Let me go back to it. Oh, this one is in order. A worksheet where they're in order, and then you can also just write the problems down where they're not in order, but they're only that particular family.
Okay.
And so you're going to be practicing that particular family. What happens in school typically is that there's not enough practice of just that family or just 2 families. You know, we want to really practice one family, and then we move to the second family and really practice that. Then we can have practice where they're combined. What happens in school typically is they go through this stuff really, really fast, and so you don't see very many sheets where it's just a sheet with the 2's on it. Instead,
Yeah.
it's, you know, an overall sheet,
And
then they're both.
You have all of them.
Exactly. And then they're absolutely lost. And so we want to be building that success. So we're only going to be giving you if we're working on the 2's and 3's, those are the only problems I'm going to give you are 2's and 3's.
Mm-hmm.
And I can mix up the order here so that you're not always doing, this particular sheet has them all in chronological order. You know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. What I would do after you practice this is then I would be mixing them up.
Yeah. Okay.
So that maybe you have a 4 times 2 and a 2 times 2 and a 6 times 2 and an 8 times 2. So it's not all in order.
Okay.
And then after we do the 2 sheet, we're going to practice our 3's, and we're going to do the 3 sheet, and then we're going to do a sheet with a combination of 2's and 3's. And it's just a matter of, simply writing out some problems. So it's not like we're talking a huge amount of work here. And you can do those kinds of things even with providing the answers like this here with the super spacers. And so since there's only 5, there's 10 spots here, you're going to do 5 problems. So each one will have 10 different problems. So you do like 4 sheets of this. And you can see, we've got it mixed up here. But that's the problem is they, typically they'll practice and they'll say we're working on this, and then they give you, pages with everything in it, and kids are just overwhelmed. It's way beyond what they can do. But if you really spend time, and for some of your kids, it may take 2 weeks, and that's okay, but they're going to get it. And when you're doing it, doing the ladders every day, and then you mix it up like this here. You have some practice where they are tracking those numbers. They can see them when they're in the bathroom because you put it on the bathroom mirror. You're going to have them say them before breakfast and when you're riding in the car and before lunch and before dinner. That was the thing I forgot to say. When you're driving in the car, everybody let's say them together. So you're really kind of inundating them, but in little bits throughout the day. So it's not like we're going to spend 30 minutes or an hour working on this in one sitting. No, we're going to do a little bit, and then we're going to do something else, and we're going to come back and do a little bit. I mean, how long does it take to say 0, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 24, 27, 30? Just a few seconds. And as I say, you can have them written out at the table that these are the ones that we're working on, and we're going to say our 2s and we're going to say our 3s before we have breakfast. And we're going to say our 2s and our 3s before we have lunch, and we're going to say our 2s and our 3s before we have dinner. Obviously, you can say grace first or grace after, but because we don't want to take that out of the picture. But you do want to be practicing, and it's fine for the whole family to do this. Yeah. And you can kind of get into a rhythm with it. It's going to make a big difference. But if I were to put all of those tables up at once, it's going to look something like this here. It's going to be like, oh my gosh, I'm on overwhelm. I cannot conceive of it.
Yeah.
And
it's kind of scary, right?
Exactly. So, we want to make it easy. So that's why we're just doing 2 at a time. So any other questions about the multiplication?
No.
And you're going to do the same exact process for division after you've learned the multiplication. You just do 2 families at a time. And typically, you already know the division tables because you've actually worked with them with the multiplication. Yeah. Because it's just the opposite. 6 divided by 3 is 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3. So that's, would be this fact here.